for average Canadians, why don't we just say they're not stupid? You know, they hear politicians reverse themselves and they know that it's just part of a survival strategy.
Mark Carney's big launch turned into a rapid, unscheduled disassembly. Chrystia Freeland kicks off her leadership campaign tomorrow, and Karina Gould may be running interference for Mark Carney to sabotage Freeland.
Let's take a look. So as everyone saw from our previous video, Mark Carney and his campaign team decided to lift a logo from MetCredit, which was a credit, or which is a credit agency, and they billed themselves as Canada's top collection agency. Kind of fitting when a lifelong banker decides to take the logo of a collections agency to try to run to be Prime Minister of Canada to continue to take your taxes.
Now, let's be fair. Carney probably had very little to do with it. I'm sure it was the people running his campaign. He may have had the final say of, yeah, that looks good, let's use that. But he didn't design the logo.
For sure.
I'm sure he didn't even narrow it down to the final one. That all relies on his team.
Now, in response to his campaign launch tweet, the MetCredit social media team says, "That's a beautiful logo, Mark, but we're apolitical." So that's coming from Brian Sommerfeld, the CEO of MetCredit. So what ended up happening then? Well, Mark Carney was then forced to retract the logo and take it down.
That looks like the gas station logo.
Yeah, it looks like a few other logos. We'll get into that in a minute. But it says in a article from the National Post, in an email statement to the National Post on Friday, MetCredit CEO Brian Sommerfeld said he did not work with Carney's campaign team, nor did he give them permission to use MetCredit's logo. He did not authorize the logo for, quote, apparent borrowing, end quote, he said. Quote, Carney's creative team definitely took a shortcut. Symbols should usually be researched first, end quote, said Sommerfeld to the National Post, adding that he sent an email to the Carney campaign on Thursday night. The email he sent reads as follows, addressed to Carney, quote, my logo is a registered trademark. The one created for your campaign is too close for comfort. Please cease using it. Thank you, end quote. Sommerfeld said later on Friday evening that he spoke with Carney's campaign team, which issued a quote-unquote sincere apology. They have made a change to the website already, he said, and you can see the logo there. Now, you may think that this is going to be the end of the logo saga, but as Tanya kind of pointed out, that looks like another logo. Well, the first logo that you may think that kind of looks like is the Petro-Can logo, but you know, Petro-Canada, they I think they use a combination of both the half logo and the full logo, so I'll give them a pass there. But one that it looks very similar to. So here's Mark Carney's new logo, and here's one from Liberty Tax Canada.
I think, though, if you brought that to a court of law and they were to look at that, they would say that there's significant differences. At least 20% difference is usually the amount of difference that it needs to be in order to say that something is distinct from something else. So again, although I'm not an expert in copyright law, I think you could look at those two logos and in a court of law, they would probably say that they're different enough to count as distinct entities.
Oh, agreed. This is going to be the end of the logo fiasco. But the problem is this is not what you want.
No, you definitely. So things like this do happen in business, but normally it happens behind closed doors. That it's one business talking to another. Hey, we are sending you a cease and desist to stop using your logo, which is almost identical to ours. And then it happens behind closed doors. Nobody knows about it. But this is out in the public eye. So I think that's what makes it a little bit more entertaining, especially because it's happening to a Liberal.
Right. And it changes the whole narrative behind the campaign launch. Nobody cares about your launch anymore. And they're all focused on the issue that your campaign was using the logo of another business, a collections agency business at that. So anyhow, but as we know, Freeland is on her way to enter the leadership race that is going to happen. Well, it kind of already happened yesterday. She put up a kind of a tweet on social media, essentially saying that she's going to be running, but we're expecting kind of a Carney-esque, but maybe without all of the extra drama, tomorrow. Don't know if that's going to be a press conference or what. We're expecting it to be a press conference. But Nick Nanos went on CTV, and he talked about this and what his thoughts are and in his opinion of Freeland's chances of actually winning.
So it looks like Chrystia Freeland is in. Now, there have been hints and suggestions from her camp, but the biggest clue came today with this social media post, a statement that reads, "I'm running to fight for Canada." It's not a definitive declaration, but it's pretty darn close. We are expecting her to launch her campaign on Sunday. Government House Leader Karina Gould is also expected to launch her leadership bid this weekend, but here is the state of the party that they both want to lead. According to the latest numbers from Nanos Research, the Conservatives still have a very healthy lead. They are up 3.7% in the last 4 weeks, while the Liberals are down nearly that amount. The NDP has also slipped by just over 2%. Joining me now to dig deeper into these numbers is founder and chief data scientist at Nanos Research, Nick Nanos. Nick, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Great to join you.
So appreciate those numbers as well, but let's start with the state of the Liberal Party as we have it. Your polling puts them about 27 points behind the Conservatives and dropping. What has history shown us with leadership races and how that could give the party a bit of a bump out of this?
Well, probably what will happen and what we've seen in the past is that when there's a resignation of an unpopular leader of a party, many times those party numbers go up because people go, okay, that leader's gone. Now there'll be someone new. But I think for the Liberals, they're probably going to have to wait until we know who all the candidates are. And this is why Chrystia Freeland's announcement to enter the race will probably be one of the key points where we'll see whether a new trend appears for the Liberals. But right now, they're way behind. They're 27 points back of the Conservatives. Just think, the Liberals were worried when they were 10 points back, 15 points back, 20 points back, 27. Mucho big. That's a mucho big advantage.
Yeah, but like they say, the most dangerous lead in hockey is a 3-goal lead, right? And it seems insurmountable. And then, who knows? I'm kidding. I'm really kidding about that one.
Okay, kudos to Mike there. He's at least being honest. This was the interesting thing. So this poll dropped. I believe it was conducted as of January 10th. So this was 4 days after Prime Minister Trudeau resigned. Now, both of them are correct. So what you will see over the next probably month or so is you will see a bit of a rebound from the Liberals. Recall that just like in hockey, as Mike talked about, whenever a unpopular coach with the team is fired or quits or is replaced or whatever happens, the team usually wins the next couple of games, even if they're on an incredible losing streak. That's just what happens. So you're going to see disenfranchised Liberals that have said, I'm not voting for the party unless somebody replaces Trudeau. They're going to come back around and say, sure, I will vote for the party now. But one thing to consider is these numbers don't necessarily stay up, right? So it's going to be interesting to see the longevity of this. Just as you can't take one poll or one day and use that to extrapolate the entire trend, you have to wait and see how this plays out.
Well, and if memory serves, the same thing happened in the States where the Democrats had a surge after Biden stepped down and Kamala Harris replaced him, and then they lost.
It ended up being a landslide in terms of the number of states won by Donald Trump.
Now, that's not to say that we can take anything for granted. If we want a conservative government, what we need to do is get involved and volunteer. It's so important for everyone to get involved in their EDA, go door knocking, make phone calls, do the back office stuff, whatever they happen to need, because it's going to be the ground game that sets the Conservatives apart from the Liberals.
Well, and it's also going to be sharing information, right? Because most Canadians that are not in tune to politics, and they're going to be the ones voting, most Canadians barely know who Chrystia Freeland even is.
Which is kind of concerning because she's been the finance minister for many years, and she was in cabinet prior to that as well. And she was also the deputy prime minister, so that if Trudeau did step down prior to Freeland resigning her deputy position, that is, but if he did step down during that time while she was deputy, then she would have been the prime minister. Right.
And the other thing to consider is even fewer people know who Mark Carney is. That's the other thing to consider. But let's go back to Nanos's numbers.
Freeland, though, and how people felt about her after her resignation from cabinet. Could the impression of Ms. Freeland improve even more now?
I think so, and I think a lot of this will have to do with her launch and what she decides to focus on. The big question is, as the former deputy prime minister, as the former minister of finance, as a former kind of ranking liberal that supported Justin Trudeau, how far will she go to distance herself from her former political ally and colleague? And I think that's going to be the big question, because she's been at the table, been an advocate, and has fought hard beside Justin Trudeau over the last number of years. And, right now, his brand is weak, and that's one of the things that's dragging down the Liberal brand writ large. So I think, how far will she distance herself from everything that she's done basically since 2015.
Well, we already got a bit of an indication this week, right, where we had reporting that she has already said she would likely walk away or very much scrap the consumer carbon tax. How much do you think that will be a factor, not only with the field of candidates and where they will sort of sit on that, but going into an election? Is that going to be the ballot box question against Pierre Poilievre as he wants it, especially when you consider where the leadership is going?
Well, I think this is an exercise in damage control for the Liberals. Like, the carbon tax has been unpopular. Canadians are worried about the rising cost of living. And for some people, and in some cases, this is a contributor because it contributes to food, being shipped around. But, the thing is that for average Canadians, why don't we just say they're not stupid? They hear politicians reverse themselves, and they know that it's just part of a survival strategy. So, for the Liberals, they might, the contenders might reverse themselves on the carbon tax, but for her, she actually has to explain how she can go from being 100% behind a carbon tax and being at the table and being the advocate for the carbon tax to reversing herself. And, the same applies to Mark Carney, because we have to be fair. He's been supportive of a carbon tax. Yeah. He's been a leader on kind of environmental issues. And, he's also kind of backpedaling on stuff like that.
Well, and, Nick said what the truth is about Canadian voters that the Liberals seem to don't agree with, which is Canadians aren't stupid. Like, they can see what's going on here.
But they treat us like we're stupid.
And that's it.
And that's the problem, that these politicians just haven't learned. They're not genuine. They're in survival mode right now. So they're going to say or do anything to keep their jobs. And Canadians understand that. Canadians are ready for a fresh government.
Well, and Canadians see that over the last 10 years, they've been berated. They've been called ignorant. They've been called climate deniers. They've been called people that set the planet on fire.
And worse.
For arguing against the carbon tax. And now they're going to turn around and say, well, we're going to get rid of that carbon tax that we were ridiculing all of Canada for, and we were shoving down your throats whether you wanted it or not, despite the fact that 70% of you didn't want it.
Right. You know how great and useful we kept saying that carbon tax was, and how it's putting more money in your pockets? Yeah, we're going to take that away now. And it's not because it was a good idea. It's not because it was saving the environment or putting more money back in Canadians' pockets. It's because now the carbon tax has become unpopular, and they know if they hang on to it, they're going to be losing seats left, right, and center.
Well, and there's a term that they use for this, and the term is politically inconvenient. Now, the next thing that we want to talk about is Karina Gould, and Nanos touches on that too.
Imagine the polling that you've either started or tried to start on potential contenders and where they would fare really differs based on day to day, because somebody drops out seemingly every day and somebody else puts their name in there. But are we really going to see the emergence here of a two-horse race? And we know that Karina Gould, the Liberal House leader, is going to announce this weekend. But do you think this really is Carney versus Freeland?
I think so, based on the speculation right now. And you know what? A two-person race is probably good for the Liberals, because it'll focus things. If you remember, Michael, some of those massive leadership contests where they have like 12, 15 people on the stage, that it doesn't allow for the same type of clarity. And, you know, Canadians like a horse race. And I think for the two frontrunners, Freeland and Carney, it'll be good for both of them to have a main contender to put pressure on each other so that we can see who can, who will get the advantage.
Okay. So you may be wondering why we showed that clip, because they only mentioned Karina Gould in passing. Well, there's a reason for that. Because nobody, and I mean nobody, thinks that Karina Gould has any chance of winning. She probably has the same chance of winning as Chandra Arya at this point.
She has the same chance of winning as if I tried to sign up.
You'd have a better chance of winning.
Maybe. But even if she has any possibility of winning the leadership race, Karina Gould is not going to win her own riding. Burlington is up, 20 points in favor of the Conservative candidate, Emily Brown?
It's a massive amount.
It's huge. And Karina's held that riding since at least 2015, to my knowledge.
Yeah, and Karina can speak French. She's done so in the House. But here's the thing. So why would Karina Gould decide to do this? Well, Brian Lilly has a very good theory on this, and we're inclined to agree. So Brian Lilly talks about the fact that when Chrystia Freeland resigned and tossed this bomb into the
cabinet,
it devastated the party. It basically shook the foundation of the Liberal Party and forced Justin Trudeau to resign. And Justin Trudeau isn't very happy about that. Justin Trudeau's team isn't very happy about that.
And he seems like the vindictive type to me.
Well, yeah, like he seized bank accounts and arrested protesters. So I think that's a foregone conclusion. So, you know, for people that are speculating these theories of, Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau, they all planned this together. No, they did not. So what Brian Lilly's theory is that Karina Gould is actually running as kind of a interference candidate. And what that means is her whole role isn't to beat Carney or to even win. It's to draw votes away from Chrystia Freeland to allow Mark Carney to win. This happened in one of the previous elections when, the PPC and the Conservatives were running against each other. So the vote was split between the two. If it wasn't, you have a Conservative government. So that's what they're kind of counting on here with Chrystia Freeland and Karina Gould. And here's an excerpt from one of Brian Lilly's articles in the Toronto Sun.
The following people with connections to Trudeau have been tied to Carney's campaign by fellow Liberals: Jerry Butts, Mike McNair, Brian Clow, Tim Pitfield, and of course his Chief of Staff, Katie Telford. Through the PMO comms team, Telford has denied making calls for Carney, but multiple independent Liberals swear the calls took place. These are people who have been with Trudeau for decades, the Globe and Mail reported Tuesday that Pitfield had stepped away, but only after his participation caused concern.
So what's he talking about there? Well, he's basically saying that Trudeau's inner circle and Karina Gould have essentially all gotten together and said, we're going to help Carney win because Freeland caused this mess on us in the first place. So this is going to be her consequence. This is going to be her punishment. So you have the Trudeau inner staff helping the Carney campaign, and even though they're coming out and denying it, even though that MPs are telling media that Telford is calling them on behalf of the Carney campaign. And you have Karina Gould that's going to be running to, as interference for the Freeland campaign. And
essentially splitting the girl vote, right?
Right.
Like that's what it seems like to me. That's why they picked Gould instead of somebody else.
Right. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And as we've said before, many of you know that Mark Carney is the godfather to one of Chrystia Freeland's kids. So it's going to be very interesting to see if this gets nasty and, who's going to go the farthest on this, right? So all we can see now is like there's a civil war brewing in the Liberal government, and it's going to be on display for Canadians for all to see. And we've even talked about this possibility happening, and it may even damage the Liberal Party even further, depending on what the candidates end up saying about anyone. And do not discount the impact of the other candidates like Chandra Arya, like Jamie Baptiste, and the other, call them no-name candidates, because they can throw some bombs out, even though they're not going to make a difference in the votes that they're going to get, but it can damage the Liberal brand even further.